Hey guys, welcome to my live. So as promised, I wanted to take some time this morning to share with you guys about my Spencerian guide sheets, as well as demo a couple of requests that I got on my Instagram. If you guys are just joining, feel free to say hello and let me know where you guys are tuning in from. I'm from Southern California. Right now it's 10 a.m. and we're in this heat wave here, so it's about like 90 all week, but next week is supposed to cool down, so looking forward to that. Hi guys. So I'm not sure your experience with Spencerian, if you're a complete beginner or if you do have some experience with Spencerian, but if you guys have been following like my posts for the past week, I am launching a new Spencerian course called Spencerian Strokes, and we're gonna start next Monday. And so in preparation for that, I've been working on some new guide sheets here that I've been sharing in on my Instagram post. And so I am thinking that we have about like an hour together, I'm guessing. So I'm gonna show you guys examples of how to use the guide sheets. Mainly this is created for my students, but eventually I am thinking about putting it up on my website so that anybody can download it. Same thing with my copperplate ones, where you can opt in to get my like free guide sheet packet. So I hope you guys are excited. If you guys can let me know if you are a complete beginner or if you do have some experience. I'm just curious like who is joining for today's live. So for my background for Spencerian, I've been doing it since 2016, and but this will be my first time actually teaching the course. I don't know why it took so long, but it's something that I really enjoyed writing in, especially as you guys know, I love copperplate. That was like my first pointed pen script, but Spencerian was like another script that I learned like about a year after copperplate. And as you guys might have seen, I love like just how delicate the script is. So it's different from copperplate in that it's not as shaded as copperplate. Copperplate, you add pressure with every downstroke, but with Spencerian, it's more of a fluid motion. And so I love Spencerian because I really feel like it does complement copperplate well. So I'm just gonna flip the camera and then we're just gonna go right into it. Okay. Thank you guys for joining. So this is kind of like, I just wanted to start with a quick introduction. I saw that a lot of you guys are beginners, beginners. So I just wanted to go over just basically why we use guide sheets, why it's important, why it will really help you guys to progress in your calligraphy. So Spencerian script is a slanted script similar to copperplate. And so let me zoom in here. Whoa. But the slant angle for Spencerian is going to be at 52 degrees. So copperplate is at 55. But, give or take a couple of degrees is no big deal. So even with copperplate, I tell my students, start with the 55, build up muscle memory, but then give or take a couple of degrees is not gonna, it's not gonna really change the script that much. Even though Spencerian and copperplate are only 3 degrees apart, I did create all new brand new guide sheets because for me, I don't know, I'm just like really like type A like that. So all of these slant lines are going to be at 52 degree slant. We're going to use the same terminology as copperplate. So, X height is going to be the distance between your baseline and your waistline. And then you have your ascender space, which is made up of first ascender, second ascender. And this space right here is going to be double your X height. And then you have your descender space, which is your first descender and second descender line. And so with Spencerian, that is slightly different from copperplate is that with the guide sheets that I created for Spencerian, not only is it going to be helpful for you guys to have these horizontal lines, but even with the slant lines, I purposely placed it like a specific width apart because that's also going to impact like the shape of your letters. So you guys might understand a little better as I demo some letters. But as an example, the reason why it's important to use guidelines, especially as a beginner or even if you're experienced, I feel like it really helps, because I've seen scripts where the proportion of certain letters are off, and it really it does throw off the entire script a little bit. So letters like D, it's only going to go up to the first ascender line. Letters like N is going to be a short letter, so they're only going to occupy your X height. And then with capital letters, we are going to use all 5 spaces. So from the second ascender line all the way down to your second descender line, it's going to be one of like the longest letters that we will do for Spencerian. And so that's the reason why it's important to use all of these horizontal lines. But with the slant lines, it's also important because, as you notice with this letter D, with this thick to thin stroke here, we are going to be on that 52 degrees. So as you practice, and if you're not familiar with the script and you're just starting off and you're trying to understand and build up your muscle memory to know how to write on this slant, I highly recommend using proper guide sheets. Okay, so moving forward, I'm going to show you guys. So the standard for Spencerian is at about 3 millimeters. So this is the 3 millimeter line. I have my X heights, and you can faintly see like the first and second descender lines here. But in my course, I actually, let me grab it here. I'm actually going to use the 6 millimeter to demonstrate for the lowercase letter, and then I'm going to be using probably the 5 millimeter to demo for the uppercase letters, because I realized that as I was practicing more yesterday, the uppercase letter to do at a 6 millimeter X height is actually double, what's standard. And so it's a little bit more challenging, especially for beginners. So this is my 6 millimeter guide sheet. Okay, so as you can see, the difference here is pretty big. So this is basically double the height. And so can you imagine doing capital letters at this height, which is standard, size, versus doing capital letters that are going to occupy this entire space. So this particular height is going to really force you to really do more of like that combined movement and forearm muscular movement versus, when you're working on a smaller X height, it's going to be tempting to use more of like your fingers, like your finger movement, just moving your fingers and not moving from your forearm muscle. And so anyway, so I'm going to start off with the lowercase, probably with the bigger one, so we can really focus on the details. And then for the uppercase one, move down to 5 millimeter, so that when you guys are comfortable with that, then when you go down to the 3 millimeter, it's literally like super easy. It's way easier to go from big to small than trying to go the other way, if that makes sense. Okay, so if you guys are ready, I am going to start with letter X. I know a couple of you guys mentioned letter X is a bit of a challenge. So right now here I have let me just position this a little bit better. I'm going to zoom in here. This is my 5 millimeter. I wonder if you can focus on this. This is my 5 millimeter X height, but also I've embedded these ovals because with some of the capital letters for Spencerian, we have to do this reverse oval, and that is such a foreign movement. It's not as natural or comfortable, and so reverse oval is going to be otherwise known as your indirect oval. So what I mean by that is you're going to be going like this. Okay, so actually let me move down here. I need to adjust this one because that oval is not as, we'll use this one right here. Okay, so reverse oval means you're going to go in a clockwise motion. So reverse oval means this is kind of the motion that you're going, the direction. So you're going from bottom to upstroke and then go back down again. Direct oval is when you do counterclockwise motion, okay? So the X is going to be a reverse oval, capital letter, okay? So we're going to be doing this movement here, okay? So first I'm going to draw it with a pencil to show you guys how to make the letter form, and then I'll switch over to like pen and ink, because for me, somebody asked me actually if you can go through the course using a pencil. And honestly, I said, if you feel more comfortable learning the letter forms with a pencil or a pen without like the stress of trying to get it right with the pen, with the nib, that's totally fine, because if you understand how to actually draw the letters, then when you're working on different surfaces like chalkboard or canvas, and you don't have the ability to use a nib and pen, then you will be able to execute the Spencerian letter forms no matter what. So I know I have some professional engravers in the course, and so even for them, like they want to use Spencerian letters for engraving, but obviously you cannot use nib when you're engraving, but they use like this machine. And so, but if you can still learn Spencerian letters and be able to use an engraver or a marker or a brush pen to execute them. So that's a little like side note there. But okay, so with the X, you are going to start. So here I have my embedded oval, and you can notice that this is going to be called your unit space. So from one slant line to the next slant line, this is measuring at about 5 millimeter, and then your waistline to your baseline is also going to be 5 millimeters. So you can think of this as kind of like your slanted square space. It's going to be equal length apart from each other. The reason why I put the oval here is because you'll see this is why we need the oval placed right between these two unit spaces, okay? So you're going to start at this particular slant line, and you're going to do that reverse oval, follow the oval shape. You're going to gradually add pressure here, right along this middle part right here. Release pressure as you come back to the baseline. So it's not going to make a full, complete oval, but obviously you're going to stop at the baseline, so there should be a little bit of a gap here. Then you're going to pick up your pen, and then you're going to come here, right at this unit space, starting at the middle point right here. You're going to make a kind of like a C shape. Come into this stroke here, gently touch it, come down to the baseline. But here, instead of doing that oval upstroke as we do for Spencerian, for copperplate, we're going to do more of an angular oval by doing more of a check mark shape. So it's more like this, okay? That kind of a shape right at the baseline to exit. And when you exit here, you don't have to touch this line. It could be a little bit to the right of it, which is why I ended it right here, okay? So let me do that again with the pen, and then I'll do it with the nib. Okay, so again, I'm just using, actually let me do a orange pen here. Oh, sorry, just kidding, gray. All right, so I'm gonna start here at this slant line, and I'm gonna go up from the baseline to the second ascender line. Right as you turn the corner, you're gonna add pressure right here at the middle, stop at the baseline. So the pressure should be about here, okay? And then you pick up your pen, come in between these two slant lines with a slight C curve, gently touch, and as you hit the baseline, we're going to do a check mark exit, okay? So important things about this letter X is that this oval shape here is going to be 2 units wide. So this reverse oval is a complete 2 units width apart. Your shade is going to occupy mainly about here. So make sure you're doing the thin to thick to thin, which is one of the pen exercises that we work on in the course. And then the entire width of this letter, starting from here, is going to be 1, 2, and 3 units wide, about. You see how this is a smidge to the right, but it's about 3 units wide. Okay, so that is letter X. And the exit stroke for this letter, it gradually goes up from the baseline to your waistline. So that's how you naturally connect it to the lowercase letters. So let me just do that with nib and ink so you guys can see. So I'm using a Nico G here. And this is a Jake Weidman pen holder. And let me just zoom out a little bit. Okay. You guys see it okay? Okay. Maybe I should zoom in more so you can see. All right. Okay, so recapping here, it's going to go from your baseline to the second ascender, second ascender line here. Then we're going to gradually add pressure right at the middle, release pressure, lift, and then from half of your unit space here, you're going to make a slight C shape and then do an exit stroke that's more of like a check mark. Okay, so using this oval really helped me to get the right like shape for the reverse ovals. Okay, so I'm using a walnut ink Nico G, and then I'm going to start here at this baseline, come up, add pressure, release pressure, come back up here half of the unit space, and then check mark. So even with these guide sheets, if you have a hard time with the thins to thick for this axis, you can always just practice that first stroke, going up, add pressure, release pressure. Okay, and you can just keep doing these exercises first. Okay, so, and then the finish stroke for the X will be a check mark here, like that. Okay, so I do have one more letter for W that was requested for this guide sheet. So another reverse oval, full reverse oval uppercase letter is going to be your W. So let me do that up here. Let's see. I'm going to move it up here. Okay, let's do it here. Can you guys see okay? Height? Okay, so let's do W. So W, I'm going to do with a pencil first, and then this time I'll write like a name. I'll do like Wendy, because I know Wendy's also one of my students. Okay, so this is the full oval that occupies 2 unit spaces apart. So for W, you're going to start here at this slant line. You're going to go up, reverse oval, same kind of motion, add pressure, and then release pressure. If you're not exactly on the oval, don't stress about it. I mean, it's not like such a big deal. We're just aiming to stay within that shape. Okay, now I'm gonna keep my eye at this point right here, which is half of this unit space. Okay, remember this is where we did the X, right? But for the W, we're going to do this curved stroke going from your baseline and then going up towards that line. Okay, so there should be some space here between this first stroke and then this second stroke. Okay, we're going to do kind of a curved, this is more of a right curve, stroke up, and then we're going to keep our eye right here at this slant line, and then we're going to go down towards that. Okay, and then we're going to follow along this slant line, and then we're going to keep our eye right here, half of that slant line here, and we're going to do a go along the slant line and then curve it out. Okay, so that you should see this nice like little triangle up here. Okay, so all of these things are, all of these strokes, the, what do you call it? The distance between the strokes here is not going to like touch each other. You should see some space with those letters. Okay, so let me do that with the gray pen, and then we'll do it with the ink. Okay, so let me try to do in one motion here. Starting from this slant line, reverse oval, come back, okay, slanted line up, down, and then up again to the first ascender line. Okay, so this pencil is kind of like where, you know, when you're studying letter forms, you should use a pencil so you can really just understand like how to make the shape, and then you can see if you can use a regular pen to draw the letter without stopping, kind of more of like a fluid motion. And then you can use your nib and ink, because once you know how to make the shapes of this, then switching over to a pen and ink should be relatively easy, because you're not going to be questioning where do I put the stroke or where do I go next, because as you know the step-by-step strokes, then writing with a nib and ink should be relatively smoother. Okay, so with this particular letter, the shade is going to be similar to the X. So the slant line, the shade is going to be like right around here. Okay. All right, so let's do that with the nib. So I personally like using a Nikoji because Spencerian, as I shared before, it's a very delicate script, and most of your lowercase letters are not shaded. So when I use like a super flexible nib, it gets really difficult for me to maintain those hairline strokes. And so I personally like using more of like a rigid nib, like the G nibs. I don't like using like super flexible nibs for Spencerian, like Hunt 101. I mean, I could use a Leonard Principle, or I used Hunt 22 or Jalot 404 is okay. But I do really like the G nibs because it gives me a lot of control, and I'm able to not worry about adding too much ink to my paper. Okay, let me know if this is helpful for you guys. Okay, so the W here, starting at the baseline, you're going to go up. Add pressure, release. Okay, we're going to make that shape, the right curve shape, up. Come back down. And then out. So if I were to write the name Wendy, let me zoom out a little bit. Okay. So if I were to write the name Wendy, this is how I would write it. Because the letter ends up here, I usually like to, even with copperplate, I like to enter into the lowercase letter below the baseline. Kind of makes it look more connected. Okay, so that would be the name Wendy. So here for this name, I added a shade to the N here, which is not like standard. The standard Spencerian for N and M are not shaded, but I like to add certain shades here and there to add more weight to the overall name. D is shaded here, right on top here, and then it goes from thick to thin for this stroke, this straight stroke here. Okay, the Y is not shaded, but if you wanted to, like a variation, you can add a slight shade here. I usually will add a shade here if I wanted to. And that's the beauty of Spencerian too, is that with shading, there is like the standard where, I'll teach you guys like the standard letter with Spencerian to add shade, kind of like as you write, and when you feel like you want to add, a shade, like to add a little bit more weight. And so, but this would be the name Wendy. Okay, so let's move on to our second guide sheet, which is similar to these reverse ovals, except, and this is me just being very nitpicky about like trying to really emulate the letter forms of like the historical penman. You don't have to be like, I don't know. I mean, it's up to you. I know some of you guys are not as detailed and it like stresses you out. For me, I want to teach kind of like from the standard that I want to, execute. And then obviously when you are writing on a regular piece of paper and on a notebook, they're not going to have these ovals or slant lines. And so when you're just using a paper with just like the baseline, then obviously these little differences are not going to be super noticeable. But when you're starting off and you're beginning a script, I like to be as structured as possible so that later on I can have the flexibility to, kind of veer from those really strict rules. But okay, so with certain letters, the oval here, if you can see, it doesn't touch, it's not the entire 2 unit spaces apart. Certain letters for the reverse oval shape, it's only going to occupy 1 3/4 of a width apart, which is why I made this particular oval a little bit smaller. So I'm going to demonstrate the letter U, because that was one of the things that you guys were asking for. Okay, so it's the same thing. Let me start with a pencil like we did before. Okay, so here, a little bit different from this versus the other one is before with the full oval that occupied the 2 unit spaces apart, we started at the slant line. But when you're using this oval with certain letters, I want you guys to start right here. Okay, a little bit to the right of the slant. Okay, so this is where you're going to start, and you're going to come around. We're going to add shade here. I'm going to add a shade. Release pressure, and as you hit the baseline, we're going to do that angular oval shape up to this slant line. Go straight down on slant, and then your exit check mark. That's going to be 1 unit space apart, okay? So this is what I'm talking about when I say that the distance between the slant lines are going to be super helpful for you guys as you practice, okay? So this is 1 unit space, this is 1 unit space, this distance is 1 and 0.75, okay? All right, so let's do it with the pen. Start a little bit to the right of the slant. We're going to go reverse oval up, add pressure here, check mark up to the first ascender line, come back down to the baseline, and exit check up to the waistline. And your shade is going to be right here. Okay, so now we're ready to do our nib. Okay, because once we know how to execute the letters using our pen and pencil and pen, it shows that we're ready for the nib. Okay, so let's go over here. Okay, we're going to start a little bit to the right of the slant, and we're going to go up. Oops. Okay, up. Add pressure, release pressure, check mark up to the first ascender line, and then come straight down, and then exit stroke up to the waistline. So let's see, if I wanted to write a word here, let's see. Maybe if I want to do like an N here, unite, flick mark, and then with the T, you can do a very loose crossbar on top. Okay, so you see how the spacing between the letters are more spaced out compared to copperplate, because the connecting stroke for Spencerian is at about a 30-degree connective slant, and so that's one of the reasons why I love this script, because it looks super flowy and it looks very romantic. All right, so now we're going to move on to one more letter for this, and then we'll do the third guide sheet that I have, and then I think that was it. I wanted to demo at least 2 letters per guide sheet. So, okay. Let's do V. I think I got someone asking for V for this. Okay. I'm going to move it down here. Zoom in again. And we'll use a pencil first. Okay. The V is very similar to the U. We're going to start off a little bit right of the slant line as a reverse oval, come up, add a shade, release. And this time you're going to do a short kind of turn here. Okay, come back up. Okay, to a left curve. Okay, this here is a left curve. This is a left curve transition to a straight line. So this is where you make that shade. And then here we're going to make a slight curve line at the baseline and then do another left curve up to this slant line right here. Okay. So the total width of this letter is going to be 1 unit, 2 units, and 3/4. So 2 3/4 width apart. This oval shape here is going to be 1 3/4 width apart. Okay, and then the distance between the shade and then the exit stroke is going to be 1 unit apart. Okay. Okay, let's do it with a pen. Okay, start here. Okay, to the right of the slant, reverse oval up. We're going to add a shade here, turn up, and make a slight curve up and touch that slant line. Okay, so this distance between here is going to be at about half. Okay, I forgot to mention that before. So here's your slant lines, this is your slant line. If I cut it down the middle here, this space right here is about how wide the V is. Okay, so let me do it with a nib. It's hard to write with the camera. Okay, so starting from the right here, okay, we're going to go up, add shade, release pressure, and then come up with a slight curve. And then this time I'll write the name Veronica. Oh, that's a long one. Okay. So this letter, it ends at the first ascender line. So we are going to, just like we did for Wendy, we're going to start below the baseline. Okay. So V, E. This is another place where I like to add a slight shade to the R, O, Veronica, and then I like to do a tick mark here, and then you can also do a tick mark for the C. Okay, so there's Veronica. All right, we're going to move on to the last guide sheet that I have here, and I'm going to show you guys letters that we use without the ovals, because sometimes the ovals can be very distracting, especially if you don't need the ovals. And so for this particular one without the ovals, I'm going to demonstrate the letter T and I. Okay, so let me come here. So this is the same X height, so that we're using the 5mm X height. We're using the ovals for all of your reverse ovals, and then for other letters that don't need that oval, reverse oval shape, we're going to be using just the standard guide sheet without the ovals. Okay, so we'll begin right here. So let's start with the letter D. I know Chaslin, I think, was the one that asked me for D. Okay. I know D is with copperplate too. It's not really a letter that I'm highly a fan of, but doesn't mean that, we can't conquer that letter together, right? So, okay, so for the letter D, we're going to start between your slant line. So at that half mark here, we're going to make a slight compound curve, and we're going to go from thin to thick to thin, and then we're going to make an oval, okay? So I went from thin, adding pressure here below the waistline, transition here, okay? Lift and release pressure, come around, leave a little bit of space here. You're not going to come all the way up to the waistline, and then we want to go all the way over here. So if you count it across, it's going to be coming out to the slant line, it's going to be 1, 2. So letter D is actually pretty wide. Okay, so make a curve down here, come back up, and this time we're going to do a direct oval. Okay, so a direct oval, not a reverse oval. Okay, so we're going to come back up, go all the way up to the ascender line here, come around, and release. Okay, so it's supposed to end a little bit above the hairline right here. And the places where I'm looking at in order to touch the slant line is I'm looking at these points here. I want to make sure I'm starting at the half point between the first and the second ascender line. I want to make sure I'm touching this slant line for the loop here. I'm making sure that there is a spacing here, so I'm not touching the waistline. I want to touch the baseline here. I want to touch the slant line here, okay? So those are just some things that I just mentally think about. And also the oval shape here should be exactly 2 units wide. So if I'm touching the slant line here, I want to make sure I'm touching the slant line here, okay? So that it's going to be 2 units space wide for that inner oval. Okay, so there's just like so many details, right? Okay, so this paper is the HP Premium 32. I linked it in my supply recommendations. And then this pencil is the Graph Gear 500 0.7, but I also have it in a 0.5. It just depends on if you want your lead to be a little bit thicker, but this is one of my favorite pencils, and actually my kids love it too, so they actually keep using mine. I buy them the cheaper ones for their school, but they somehow go into my office space, and then they take all my nice pencils. So I told them I'll buy them their own because they really like the feel of this. It has a really nice grip here. So anyway, so this is a Pentel Graph Gear. I'm printing my guide sheets onto the HP Premium 32. This one, should not have any problems writing on it. Okay, so let's do this letter D with a pen without stopping. Okay, so I'm going to do it next to it right here, side by side. Okay, remember we're starting in between your slant line at about half mark. So not only is this between your slant line, but even between your first and the second ascender line, it should be at about half. Okay, so about here, we're going to go down, slanted. I have to remember to breathe. So I just did this in one motion, okay? And you guys might need some time to, practice understanding, analyzing the letter form first, and then you can switch over to a pen and try to practice this with a pen. Okay, so we started halfway between your first and the second ascender line, and half between this slant line and this one. You're going to add a pressure right here, transition pressure right here. See if I could draw it in right here. Okay. You're going to do a small oval shape. Make sure to leave a little bit of space here. Okay. This is going to be full 2 unit width apart. Okay. And then the entire letter here is going to take up 3 spaces. So from here you have 1, 2, 3 units wide. I hope you can see that like using these guide sheets and knowing where to kind of aim your strokes, it makes it a little bit more like doable. Because when I, even with copperplate or with Spencerian, sometimes the slant lines are so far spaced apart, and then you're questioning how wide the letters should be. And that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to take my time creating these particular guide sheets, because that was my struggle. Like I really wanted to know how to practice having the proper like width of the letters, and so spacing these slant lines apart was super helpful for my practice, and so I'm excited to have you guys use them to practice the letters too. Okay, so let's do it with a nib and ink. I'm going to do it right here. Okay, so this time I'm going to go in between. Okay, I have all these notes in my mind, right? I'm going from here to here, making a small oval shape, and then I have to space it apart at about 2.5 units wide. Okay, so from here. Okay, not bad. I missed that baseline, but not bad. I'm pretty happy with it. It's not perfect, but that's okay. All right, let's do it again. Okay, so we'll do from half, compound curve down, add a pressure below the waistline, curve it I keep missing that baseline. Curve it around. And release. Okay, so this should be 2 units wide. The entire letter is 3 units wide. And then let's do dear. So when you write a letter, you can do dear. Okay, so do E. So that's how you would write dear. So the letter D does look pretty wide, but I think for what's important here is to make sure that you're touching your ink at this slant line at these points. If you touch it here and here and here, then you are going to make that like optimal oval shape, okay? That's why we talked about it with our pencil sketch here, is that when you're working with the pencil and trying to draw this letter, make sure you're hitting these points, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. And actually 1 up here too. Okay, make sure you hit that like second ascender line. Okay, so, and also keep in mind that we're working on a 5mm guide sheet. And I shared before, but the standard for a Spencerian, the standard size for like writing Spencerian is actually at 3mm. So here is the 5, and look at the 3. It's a lot smaller. So, when we do the deer, I'm going to actually write it again on the 3mm so you guys can see the differences here. Okay, it's so much more doable writing on this small of an X height, because all the letters here are super small. Because not copperplate. I keep saying copperplate. Spencerian is you can write it for correspondence, bookkeeping, things like that. But the letters are a lot smaller, and it's supposed to be faster, than copperplate. Okay, so I'm gonna do it. This is on a 3mm. Okay, so let's do it here. Okay, so if you do it on a 3mm, it's going to be like you're not going to have to extend out your hand too much, because everything's very small. But for the course, we're going to work with the 5 or 6mm ones, so you have the right shape of the letter forms. Okay, so there is the 3mm, but let me zoom out so you can see. Look how small that is, okay, compared to this 5mm one that we just did together. Okay, here's the 5, and then Look at the 3. Okay, it's a lot smaller. Okay, but the reason why I like to practice on this again is because when you're writing on this 3mm one, it's going to be really small, and you have to have really good control over your nib to place the shade at the appropriate space. And so if the best way to practice that pressure and release for the nibs is going to be at a bigger X height. Okay, so that's why we are going to be using this X height, 5 or 6mm, and then by the end of the course, I'm probably going to have my students work on a piece using the 3mm, and they will probably enjoy writing on a 3mm because it's a lot easier to execute the letters that way. Okay, so I hope that helped for the letter D. I did get a request for letter I for Isaac, so let me do the letter I, and I think that should be it. I told my husband to come back in 1 hour. He left the house with Jude. Every time I have to do video recording or live session, I always have to make sure that the house is completely quiet. All right, so I have my pencil first, and I'm going to be drawing my letter I. So for the letter I, we're going to be using the full 1 unit width apart. Okay, we're going to start here at this waist, at the baseline. I want to touch this place right here, okay? And I'm going to make a reverse oval, but it's going to be a skinnier oval, okay? So I'm going to go up, reverse oval, come down, stay within that unit space apart. And then from here, we're going to do this horizontal oval shape like this, okay? But the width of that is going to be 2.5 units wide. So right around here. So from here, it's going to be 1, 2, and 2.5. The shape of this horizontal oval is only going to touch at about here. So as I come down here to the baseline, add pressure here, pressure, and then come back around. Okay. So that's the main thing. Importance here is that this is 3 units high, 2.5 units wide, and then the distance between here to here is going to be 1.5 about, okay, approximately, okay, about 1.5, and then you want to cross these 2 lines together, but don't touch that waistline. Okay, so let's do that with a pen. Okay, so now I'm here, starting here. I know I need to fill up this entire unit space. And that will be the shape of the eye. Okay, and this will be where the shade is, right here. Okay, so let's do, so right here, this is 1.5, okay, and then from here to here, okay, the width of the entire letter is going to be 2.5, okay, the width of the loop here is going to be at 1 unit wide. Okay, so these are just some of the markers to watch out for as you guys are practicing. Okay, so let's do it with a nib and ink. And I think her name of her son was Isaac, so we'll write Isaac. Okay. I might have to zoom out a little bit. Okay. Okay, we're starting from here, this point right here. Okay, and then we'll do Isaac. Shade, angular oval, like that. Okay, this is another example of how the capital letter, it it exits off above the baseline. So whenever that happens, you have to disconnect the capital letter with the lowercase letter. And personally, I like to just kind of hug the spacing here parallel to the uppercase letter by starting the lowercase letter below the baseline. It kind of connects it like all together. Oh, yay, Jess. Okay, so the last letter, because it's like, I don't want to keep you guys too long here, is going to be your letter T. And I'm going to write Tara. Tara is one of my students, and she requested T. I actually really like the letter T. I think it's super beautiful. Let's do, okay, same thing here. We're going to do the letter T in pencil. We're going to move on to pen to get the flow right, and then we'll do the nib. Okay, so the T is going to start same thing as your D. We're going to start in between your slant lines at the half mark, and then we're going to, but the tricky part here is we're starting at this point here, but the horizontal oval for the bottom of the T is also going to be 2.5. So because this is half mark here, we want to come down and make sure we're going to touch this line right here. Okay, so we're going to do a slight compound curve from here, thin to thick. We're going to add pressure right below the baseline transition, release pressure. Come around like that. Okay, so the shape here is going to be 2.5 units wide. Okay, and then you're going to exit here by you're going to touch that slant line right here. This is going to start halfway between these two slant lines, and also it's going to be 1.5. It's going to be in between the first and the second ascender line. Okay, so that will be your main stem for the T. And this is similar to the F. If I wanted to connect it to an F, it's literally you're just going to extend this out here, curve it up, and then we're going to add like a little tick mark. So that's the difference between your T and your F. Okay, but going back to, but I wanted to write Tara, so let's erase that. Okay, so we'll do the T, compound curve, touch that slant line. Okay, the top part of the T is going to take up the space from first and second ascender line. And you're actually going to start at this particular slant line. And we're going to come around, curve it, add a loop here, tuck it under, and then come back up. Okay, so we're starting at this slant line, we're adding a loop at this slant line, we're going to curve it at this slant line, and we're going to make sure to touch it at this slant line. Okay, so all of these slant lines are very important to get the right length and the width and all that stuff. Okay, let's recap here. Okay, so this one from here to here is going to be 1.5, right? Then from here to here, the shape, the width of this oval is going to be 2.5, okay? And then we're going to make sure to start this part right here, the stem is going to be at 2.5, okay? And then make sure to hit these points, this one, I'm gonna touch it right here too. Okay, so let's do it with a pen. Starting from here, we're going to do a curve stroke. Oops, this one was a little bit high. I should have done that a little lower. Let's do it right here. Better. Okay. And then from here, we're going to start at this slant line and we're going to go curving up, loop, cross, curve, and touch. Okay, so there's your T. And then the shade for this T is going to be right here at the bottom. Okay, so most of the shades are actually a little bit lower. Some of them are placed at the middle and some of them are going to be placed at the lower 1/3 of the letter. Okay, so those are things that we're going to talk about. Okay, so let's do this letter together in with a nib and ink. Okay, so starting at the half point here, compound curve down as she release pressure, come up, touch that slant line, lift up your pen, come on top, add a loop, 1 unit space distance down, and then touch that particular slant line. Okay, and then I'm going to write the name Tara. I think I saw Tara's here, right? Okay. And this one too, I'm going to start below the baseline. Just find that it really kind of likes how it flows together. Add a shade here. And exit. Yay! Hi, Tara. Okay, so that's how you would write Tara. So it's been about an hour, but I hope you guys found this to be helpful for knowing how to practice your Spencerian and utilizing my guide sheets. It's kind of a sneak preview. I also wanted to share with you guys like what we're going to talk about in my course. And so I am pretty technical when it comes to teaching because I do want you guys to know what the standard is. And then obviously even with my kids, when I taught them cursive, I was pretty strict about the rules and the structure. But now if you guys see my kids' cursive, now they've kind of added their own flair and their own personality to it. So it looks a little different. And so even with Spencerian, I think people will have like a different Spencerian look. Some people will like their letters a little bit more spaced apart. You know, they're gonna kind of play around with making this spacing tighter or more spaced apart. And others might, you know, like it to look, you know, pretty standard. So I just wanted to go over, you know, here, let me just recap for you guys. So this is kind of the guide sheet. The 5mm guide sheet that I'm using here is for letters like D, I, and T. We are going to be using the slant lines as well as the distance between them to understand like the width of each letter form. And then we wrote out the letters U and V here. We did Unite and Veronica. And this one was using my oval embedded guide sheet, but the detail here is that the oval width is only 1 3/4 of an inch wide. Well, not inch, I mean unit wide, because this particular reverse oval is a little bit more narrow than some of the other capital letters. Okay, so this was the U and the V, and then lastly we did. What do we do? Oh, okay. Lastly, we did the full oval, reverse oval. We did the X, and then the letter Y, not Y, the letter W. Okay, so my joy and my hope is to just share and break down these letters so that you will have you will have that confidence to know how to execute these letter forms instead of questioning and wondering, you know, is my letter form proper? Is it at a good distance apart? With these guide sheets, now you really have the full confidence in knowing how to, you know, write these letters. So thank you guys so much for joining. I'm just going to wrap it up here. I'm going to try to save this. Hopefully IG won't crash on me, but hope you guys enjoyed it, learned a lot. And for those of you who are joining me next week, starting Monday, I hope you guys are pumped and excited for learning Spencerian with me.